Fresh off his fifth Hard Rock 100 finish, Mike Ehredt is back on the show to share his latest adventures in the San Juans. The veteran Hard Rocker reflects on this absolutely beautiful route and what it takes to successfully complete this extreme race as a back-of-the-pack runner. We dive into what makes this community special and what the future holds for him in Silverton. Mike also is a race director, and so of course we talk about the challenges and joys of organizing a trail race. But before we dive into the conversation, I want to take a moment and talk about this week's upcoming little backyard adventure. I'm super excited to bring you the race back to LBA Park in Olympia and invite over 100 runners to join me in these magical woods. The route this time is slightly longer, closer to 4 miles for each loop, but still very twisty. In fact, even more so this time around. I can't leave without mentioning the sponsors for the Little Backyard Adventure. So join me as I think Swantown Inn, the special bed and breakfast on the east side of Olympia, OliFed, Olympia's neighborhood bank, Tailwind Nutrition, the only racing fuel you will need, and pouring freely at our aid stations again. Kevin Hayward, State Farm. Reach out to Kevin and his incredible team for any of your questions regarding your car, home, or life insurance. Eastside Big Tom, best burgers and shakes, and our pre-race pickup location. Runners, check your pre-race email. You can pick up your race package on Friday, the day before the race, from 5 to 7 p.m. right at Big Tom's. Homelight, if you want to sell your home fast, go check out homelight.com. Club Oli Road Running is the local running club and supporter of Little Backyard Adventure. Squirrels, nut butter. Say goodbye to chafing anywhere. And of course, longtime supporter of Single Track and LBA Heritage Bank. Visit littlebackyardadventure.com to learn about the race and come to LBA Park on Saturday, July 31st to race, to cheer, and to be part of our awesome trail community. And now, extending the local trail community into a global one, here's Mike from far away Idaho. How are you?
Good. How you been?
Very good. This summer has been absolutely crazy for me because, you're probably somewhat in a similar boat in a sense that, with last year all the races being canceled and everything, I had planned 3 races, so there was everything up in the air. Is it even worth doing a race? And we're still not sort of through all of this. There are still variants and new guidelines and stuff. And so I was very hesitant going into trying to organize another race, and now it's sort of coming together. It's coming together, and it feels absolutely amazing. And so, I'm just super excited that things are sort of ramping back up. How's it with you and your races over there?
Yeah, it's things seem normal.
Yeah,
but of course they're not normal. But we had a really good outing up at Schweitzer Mountain, our Race the Wolf up there. I think we had 500 people across 3 races.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, we had a really good turnout, and we had our, little guidelines, but no issues. It was a really, really hot day, and fortunately, we didn't have any casualties on that. But no, it's going well. More and more we see different events, some of the rain shadow races popping up. But, there's still this underlying almost hesitancy that I think people have as far as, because we still haven't got the green light and things aren't normal. And they will probably never be normal again, but we'll get back to our scene.
Yeah, it is weird. I remember, I'm a new race director. I've organized LBA once, so I don't have that history, both from being embedded in the community and having it sort of be this staple that people are waiting for, but then also just from a business point of view or from an organizational point of view, I don't even have all of the pieces, the supplies really. Last time I borrowed pieces together. So for me, I had a lot of questions of if I even should restart it, because it wasn't really sort of established as a race, both for me and for the community. And that feels really weird because, I don't know, 4 years ago when I sort of considered going into racing, with trail racing or trail running in general, seeing this huge explosion, it seemed inevitable that there was a business opportunity. I'm not talking straightly financial, but just from if you build it, they will come because the people are out there, right? And one year, not just pandemic, but also the dangers for wildfires and everything, and all of a sudden everything feels up in the air and disrupted and uncertain.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so many variables to consider to put on a successful event. One, will you have enough competitors to keep your head above water? Certainly, race directors, if this was a lucrative, money-making venture, most race directors wouldn't have second jobs. But I think it's for the pure love of it. But yeah, so many different variables of fires, COVID. You just don't know what's going to happen. And with our runners, then too, you get also a lot of requests that happen every year with an event. I've injured myself. I'm sick. I've got this going on. I've got that going on. Can I get a refund? Can I not get a refund? What's going to happen if there's a fire? A gazillion things. So I think it's really important that, and most races do this, to be very clear on what's taking place and what will happen if something doesn't take place.
Yeah.
It just kind of eliminates those questions.
No, exactly. And I don't want to give the wrong impression. For me, it's not just about the financial aspect, but there is an aspect of sustainability, right? That in a sense, you put so much work into putting an event in, especially an outdoor event, and there's so many variables that, and you're managing so many people and providing or trying to provide a safe and welcoming and fun environment, that there needs to be some benefit from it, and in a sense that it needs to be successful for you in order for you to want to pick this up the following year, right? Just because it's so many long days and long hours, and I'm not complaining. I love doing it, but it is sort of an interesting game. And for me, with LBA, it's a city park, right? It's woods, really in city limits. I've got bathrooms there, and cell coverage is nothing compared to these races that are truly in the wilderness, where the level of uncertainty takes it to a complete new level, right? Sure.
I noticed that in just our event. Spending a whole week marking a course up there that was 25K or 26K and 52K.
Mm-hmm.
And probably I have a habit of over-marking stuff.
Yeah.
But that can also be, it also sometimes takes away from the essence of trail running, which is, adventure.
Yeah.
The unknown. So there's a fine line between over-marking, under-marking. You want people to have a good time, follow the course. But inevitably, somebody wants to create a new route on their Strava. They'll go out of their way to create that new route, no matter what signage you put out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I also noticed, too, the difference between, like, our race and a larger race like Hardrock, over 100 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think that someone new to trail running would think like a course like that would be heavily marked, and it's not. And that I found very interesting.
That is very interesting. I think, and I'm dealing with this because my shortest distance is 4 miles, so it's a perfect introductory to trail running. But because of it, I can't set the expectation of sort of experience and self-sufficiency that comes with that experience. Like, I don't think I could pull off a cupless race because I have so many newcomers that they don't own a hydration pack. They don't own all the gear that comes with it. And running a 4-mile course, you don't really need to take a hydration pack, right? So it becomes a different story, but it is a great segue because what we really wanted to talk about is hard rock. And it is a perfect segue in essence because hard rock had to get canceled 2 years, last year because of COVID, and the year prior, was it snow or was it wildfire? I don't remember.
Snowfall.
It was snowfall, right? And with these big races in the big mountains, you don't have a variable that some of the more controlled environments don't really have to worry about, but is with an outdoor event always a factor, right?
Sure.
So let's talk about hard rock. You completed hard rock, and again, congratulations to start this off. This is an absolute incredible feat. I mean, I saw Killian talk about it, not talk about hard rock, but throughout that time that he brought up this question around what is the hardest race, and a lot of races sort of claim that they are sort of the hardest race, but hard rock truly is one of the hardest races out there, and you just keep going back.
Well, I think I'm off that train now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This was the last time.
Yeah, five times. 5 is a good number for me.
Yeah,
and I was very fortunate. It took 13 years
mm-hmm.
to accomplish that because of the lottery every year.
Yeah,
it now puts me in a separate category called the veterans, of which I think there's only about 30 or 40 guys that have done it 5 times or more.
Wow.
So it increases my odds of getting in every year. But, to me, I was talking about it with a friend of mine, and we both had a ticket to a train that was going to be punched 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the snow set it aside, and then COVID set it aside, and we still held in our hands this ticket for this train called Hard Rock, and we punched it and we got it done. And now we can take a different train and go on to other things. For me, I feel like 5 is plenty. 500 miles in the San Juans on a personal level was what I always wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And now I think for Hard Rock, it's time for me to give back. And I would love to volunteer down there. I would mm-hmm. love to go down and pace someone who's never done it. Yeah. I think they'd hit the pacer jackpot. If they had me along with them, I think that would be great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a magnificent race. It is extremely difficult, and I had the I don't know, it was a blessing and a curse this year. I didn't get chosen in the lottery because they had decided to redo the list, and so I was on the wait list, way down the wait list, probably number 17. Oh, yeah. So training is not, probably was 50% of what I would normally do. And then all of a sudden I'm up to number 5, and then I'm up to number 2. And then I never liked to panic train. Yeah. But I in the back of my mind, I knew I could get around the course in the 48 hours. It may not have been one of my better ones, but in the end, nobody really gives a hoot about your time.
Yeah.
Except those of us who look at the Killians and the Francois and the Schlarbs and the Bowmans and all those. But for ourselves, Well, certainly time, is of interest to a lot of people. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm at mile 56, and I'm amazed at Francois Dehaene finishing in 21 hours, and he's 44 miles ahead of me, Matthias.
Yeah.
44 miles ahead of me, and I'm like just over the halfway mark. Now, that blows my mind. But, in the end, when you mention a Hard Rock, when you mention a Leadville, a Wasatch, a Boston, or a New York marathons, nobody really cares about your time.
Yeah.
But they're just amazed that you did Boston, you did Hard Rock, you did Leadville. That's awesome. So for me going down there, I knew I could get around the course. I knew it was going to be a long 40-plus hours. But I had two of my best friends with me, and I always said that, if I knew that a race is going to be my last 100-miler, then I would want it to be at Hard Rock.
Ooh, okay.
Well, hey, if it comes to that, then it was great. But yeah, certainly, on short notice going down there.
Yeah.
It was a big bone to chew.
In some respects, I was thinking about this, right? You were just mentioning how Francois can finish the course in half the time than you do, almost. In some respects, it's even harder to be a slower runner because you have to plan for so much longer to be on the course. Right? You see the top runners at Western States not wearing a vest and only holding water bottles. You're like, yeah, because you're so fast between aid stations that you don't need that much liquid. But if you're a slower runner and you have to plan for 2 nights on the course, you have to plan for 3 hours between aid stations as opposed to an hour and a half. I mean, the amount of stuff that you carry, the amount of considerations that you make, in some respects, it's harder to be on the course longer, and in that sense, and that's speaking from me being a slow runner too, it's a bigger feat to finish something in a slower time because you spend so much longer out in the elements.
Oh, sure. It's in the planning stage. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had stumbled on this probably 30, 35 years ago, and I could have the luxury of just running aid station to aid station as fast as I could.
Right.
But those days are long gone, and it is harder to stay out there longer. Because of one of the glaring facts is that you're actually chasing cutoffs. So you don't have the luxury of staying at an aid station for 15, 20, 30 minutes collecting yourself. It often comes down to, you're in and out as if you were a faster runner. So that is even harder on you.
Yeah. So scale back for us a little bit, especially for our listeners. You've done Hard Rock 5 times. I've been in Colorado. I've never been in San Juans. Explain to us a little bit what makes this race so special. Let's start with the location. Give us a little bit of an overview of these mountains, of the trail that you're running on, the route that you're experiencing, and then we'll dive into the culture a little bit more. But give us a little bit. What is Hard Rock? Where is Hard Rock?
Well, it begins in Silverton, Colorado, which sits at right around 9,300 feet. And 26 years ago, it was created to commemorate the Hard Rock miners, that nicknamed Hard Rockers, in the Silverton, Lake City, Ouray, Telluride area. So a lot of the route to intertwine those cities from Silverton to Ouray to Telluride back to Silverton follows some of the old mining routes, some of the old roads, some of the old trails. It has a cumulative climbing ascent of over 33,000 feet.
That's more than UTMB, right?
It is, and it's that's higher than Everest, over the days. Yeah, and the same amount of descent. Just very, the highest point is 14,050, I believe, and you go over 13,000 a couple times, but the majority of the race averages above 10,000 feet, which is just insane. On a personal level, I would say it's probably 70% power hiking, walking, 30% running.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the climbs are long. Some are steep, very steep. Some not too bad, but just the fact that you're at altitude just really slows you down. So every year they change directions. So in an even year, they'll go Telluride, Ouray, back to Silverton. So it's just one big loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the altitude is what terrifies me probably the most, because I've got mountains here, but and so I can get the technical piece trained up, but I would have to like come out 4 weeks ahead of time to try to acclimate to the altitude. I mean, that's what Francois did, right? He spent out quite a few days prior in the area, which is also a nice little luxury. Not most of us don't have. How do you? You're based in Idaho. What's your elevation over there?
So we're at 2,140.
Yeah, that's almost nothing compared to where you're going to be running, right? So it's
sure. The beauty about Idaho is that everything around me is very steep. So the feet per mile that you will climb is comparable or even more than what I would find at Hardrock. Meaning, I can climb 800 feet per mile. I can find stuff 1,200 feet per mile. Which is pretty good steep.
Yeah.
So I can find a lot of vertical, which is important. I think it's also important, for me anyways, that I incorporate faster running to get my heart rate way up there. So I'll often do a hard road marathon in my training. As far as altitude, I found for me that if I have 3 weeks down there, we all don't have that luxury, but I did. Then my tank is about 3/4 full, because it does take 6 months or more to be fully acclimated. Mm-hmm. But this year I only had like 9 days. Okay. So the important thing, what I've found, is to lower your expectations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure.
If you're coming wherever you're coming from, if you've been training hard and you think you're going to go into that event and you're going to run it hard and disregard the altitude or put it in the back of your mind, you're going to get smacked in the face with reality real quick. So you have to lower your expectations. And when you do that, now you're back in the lane that you should be in based on your training.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is to really approach it as an adventure out. The way we go on long adventures, where we don't worry about pace, where we worry about the scenery and the place we'll worry, where we care about the scenery and place that we're in, right? This is not about placement. This is not about time finished. This is really about the experience in these mountains and with these fellow runners, right?
Sure. And because oftentimes, we can get caught up in what's going on around us with other runners, that race environment. And don't get me wrong, I love competing, but there's also races where, like I said, you have to lower your expectations based on the environmental factors. And when you do that, then there's no pressure on you. Yeah. And I certainly felt like this year, going into Hardrock, it was almost a blessing that I was a little underprepared, because I have found that when you're underprepared, you will often meet or exceed your expectations, because during the event, your will, your desire lift you to another level. If you're overprepared, you go into a race flat, you go into a race tired, you're going to have a long, long day or 2 days, and it won't be an enjoyable experience. So it's a fine line.
So the field is fairly small, right? You have 150 runners or so. So that stretches out. So the experience of when you're out on the course is you're pretty much by yourself. Am I?
Pretty much.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, I've run bigger ultras with more runners, and just even in lot shorter distances. And you can run a half marathon in a hilly, mountainous environment, and people immediately disappear just
Yeah.
because of the way the course is. And they might be only a few hundred feet in front of you, but you'll not see them for hours because of the way the course
Sure.
is. So this becomes then really a personal experience for you, to just be in these mountains and experience these trails.
Sure. And it's a whole different mindset. Like when I was speaking earlier about our race in Idaho and comparing the two, in their barest essence, they're both running, and they're both running a distance. One is greater than the other. Now taking into account the environmental factors, but also the fact that at Hard Rock you're by yourself. You're on a trail that is, doesn't have markers every 100 yards for you to follow, where they could very well be a half mile or more before you see a marker. So now you've got this mental aspect of, I'm out here, I'm alone, I'm on this trail. Am I really on the trail?
Yeah, yeah.
You have to have, confidence that, and just stay in that spot that what you're doing is correct, not think too much about it. Probably maybe up a mile ahead of you, you might see a body and you're right. But then too, that comes into play at night when you absolutely for sure at Hard Rock should have a pacer with you at night, especially through the second night, because things can go south really fast, and it's nice to have a body with you and a clear head with you and another set of eyes with you. Yeah, thinking about the two races, here's one, you have these confidence markers, just follow the breadcrumbs to the finish. And yet here's this other one that is very remote, very sparsely marked, because again, their biggest reason is you're only on one trail. So we're not going to give you confidence markers because you're just on one trail. There's no turns, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You're on a road for a long period of time. There's no need to put these markers every 100. But yeah, one would think a longer race in the mountains would be more heavily marked. And but that too is the beauty of it, because that brings you back to the essence of trail running, adventure, being out there, being responsible for yourself.
At what mile did you pick up your pacers?
That's interesting because just turning 60, Hard Rock, you can have someone with you the whole way. So a lot of the guys that were around me were utilizing their Hard Rock pension.
Yes.
With them. But I actually picked up my first pacer at mile 43.
Okay.
And she went with me for around 28, 29 miles. And then I picked up another pacer in Telluride to the end.
Mm-hmm. Great. That's awesome. How's the atmosphere? Let's talk a little bit about the culture. Hard Rock is very, very mythical in a sense that it's very, very well-known race and very big in people's minds. But the race is actually really small. There are only 150 runners, and I think partially because it attracts such a high caliber field and because it's so difficult, but there is something where the race tries to stay small and exclusive a little bit. Speak to me a little bit how this translates for you as a runner, as you're experiencing the community out there.
Well, as a race director too, I totally understand where Hard Rock's at. I'm sure probably they would like to have a few more numbers, but permitting requirements, they can only keep it at 150. And over the years, it's grown and been very difficult to get into via the lottery. But I think it's been a very fair lottery. It has an atmosphere of being very tribal in a way, family oriented. Mm-hmm. like once you've done it, you know, are part of this, you know, this elite club. I think I'm almost for certain that when we were there at the awards, they brought up the fact that over 26 years, there's been 760 plus finishers. That's not a lot of people over 26 years, you know. But it is because of it being small, you have more of a sense of family, community, brotherhood, sisterhood. There's none of this elitism to it. I've never picked up on that at all. You know, we have elite runners come there, very elite, the best in the world. But yet, you can be having coffee with them in downtown Silverton.
Yeah.
So they're elite, but they're not elitist. Everybody's just a runner at Hard Rock. Everybody's just part of the family. And that's what's always been so magical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds amazing, and you had the chance to complete this five times. Give me a couple highlights from the course. I know that there are certain names of trails that for people who follow online are well known, but for you personally, what are some of your favorite sections of the course?
Well, I know the names probably won't mean a lot to a lot of people, but you know, I was lucky to go the same direction 3 times. And so I'll have to give you what's freshest on my mind.
Oh, no, for sure.
Yeah, so this year was really special because, you know, more or less being out of the COVID thing, there seemed to be a lot more people out on Main Street when everybody leaves the Rock, because the goal is to get back to the Rock and kiss the Rock, mm-hmm. which they, you know, sanitize after every kiss.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. But I would say this year, one of the first highlights is getting up to one of the first big climbs near Cunningham, one of the first aid stations, and you get up there and you look around and you can pretty much see where you're going to go. So the scope of it is kind of like, okay, there's like 3 peaks and I'm beyond that, and there's, you know, the big pass, okay, and way over there is Telluride, okay, you know, mm-hmm. and it's not overwhelming, it's endearing. So you get these endearing views of where you're going to go, and coming down in the Cunningham, you know, the first aid station, you know, it's 9 miles in, and I was like at 2.5 hours. Which, you know, seems pedestrian slow, but it's not when you realize half of it's walking.
Yeah, it sounds like a good tough trail run from a timing.
Yeah. And certainly, probably for me, topping out at the highest point on the course, which is Handy's, over 14,000 feet. That is around mile 35 coming in. So for me, when I go this direction, it's much better because it's early on in the race versus, say, mile 67 mm-hmm. in the other direction. But you know, that's a climb on single track trail, a hiking trail, that you're totally alone. You know, there's no one's going to come get you if things go south. You know, you're totally responsible for getting yourself to the top, and it's you know, it's a ball buster. I'll be honest. And I got to the top, and I did a short video that said, you know, I just got my ass kicked, mm-hmm. and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's the sadistic part of it. But topping out at 14,000, looking around, that was a special moment. And the third one is when there's about maybe 28 miles left. I can't remember exactly, but Kroger's Canteen, it's a very small aid station, about the size of maybe 3 ping pong tables. And it tops out at 13.2, but I always partake in their special sports drink when I get up there, which this year was some mezcal.
Nice.
I had pierogies and tequila, and the next thing I know, I was in Telluride.
Well, there you go. Gives you wings.
Yeah, yeah. Um, uh, One of the special times too was, I think it was on my third one. My wife came with me, and we were coming in the last 9 miles together, going in the opposite direction. So I'm going up Cunningham, and we climbed up to the top, and she was behind me. We get up there, and we just stopped and looked around, and she says, "Okay, I get it now." Because she looked around and saw it all. So having her finish with me was great. But it's almost surreal to finish each one, because you're on this long, 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 incredible journey. You can't look at the big picture; it'll overwhelm you. But then you come around a corner, and there's this rock with a mountain goat on it, painted. You see the time, and you see people waiting for you, and then you kiss the rock, and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that, you file it away, into that library in your mind of the beautiful things that have happened in your life.
Yeah. Wow. What an experience for you. So you said you're 60 now. This is your fifth Hard Rock. You are calling it quits. I think people who've been long on the wait list and have long been eyeing to try to get into this race, they probably thank you. They're like, yes, somebody's opening up a spot, even though you obviously fight for it every lottery. There's no fighting for it every year too. This is absolutely incredible. I remember we had talked a couple years ago on this podcast, and I don't know, if on the show or throughout the year, said if you ever come and run Hard Rock, then you'd come out and pace me. And I found this an incredible invitation, but Hard Rock, of all the races out there, I think Hard Rock intimidates me probably the most. Perhaps Badwater would be another one, but that one is one that is truly terrifying to me, which is one of my favorite words. I ran 100-miler, or attempted one earlier the year at Zion, and the heat in the desert completely did me, and I gave up. After 70 miles, I couldn't go anymore. But you doing 5 Hard Rocks is very, very impressive. Congrats again. So now that you kind of have passed on that torch, you say you want to come back. This is your family. You'll be back to work the aid station, work the community.
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing. In fact, I think every person who does an ultra on trails really needs to volunteer, because you need to see it from both sides of the coin and both sides of the fence. Yeah. You have a better understanding for what goes on, one, as a volunteer, who we often, take for granted. And I think that's important to fill their shoes and to give back to the sport and to help someone like someone helped you,
yeah.
Play it forward. Yeah.
Well, and I think it speaks to sort of the bigger picture a bit. Sometimes we as runners, we count our activities only if we can track them in Strava. We count our value as a runner, if you will, only if it's something that shows up in Strava. But being on the other side and participating and volunteering and making these experiences for other runners possible gives you the same amount of gratification, if you will, even though you can't show it on Strava. And that's sort of an interesting thing that is hard to tell people who are super focused on just their Strava numbers.
Sure. And I think those probably are the kind of people that, they have a zenith in the sport. They get in, they go hard, they go fast for so long, whatever their level of fast is, and then they're out of the sport. So they've come in, they've eaten at the table, but they got up, before dessert was served, and dessert being, volunteering, helping.
I like
seen
it.
it. Yeah.
I really, really like it that volunteering is not washing the dishes afterwards, but is actually dessert. I think that's an incredible picture. I'll take that. I'll very much take that with me this weekend
Yeah.
as I'm organizing my race. So now you're back home. You're already in the swing of things of organizing your own races. You sort of achieved. You've ran the. I don't know what's it. I hate the word bucket list item, and I say that all the time. But what are some of the dream experiences that you still see for you on the horizon? I mean, it doesn't have to be races, but routes to run. What tickles your fancy?
Well, even though it technically is a race, going back to Wales to do Dragon's Back next year. That's I've done it once, but maybe I watched too much Outlander on Netflix. Just had this desire to get back to the Welsh countryside and the Scottish Highlands and wherever. But going back to Wales with a number of friends, again, yeah, technically it's a race. For us, it's a journey. From north of Wales to the south over 6 days, and start at a castle, finish at a castle. I found it very difficult the first time, but very beautiful, and I want to go back and have another go at it. So next year, 2022, in the fall, we'll be doing that. I guess I've always been, hopefully in my lifetime I'll be able to get to Italy and venture the Dolomites. I think just taking these long run adventures, that are on your own, where the money you spend is, to support yourself, getting from A to B and getting over there versus, paying a large entry fee to do something that you can totally do on your own and have just a wonderful experience with also. So yeah, I would love to see Italy. I'd love to see Scotland. I'm sure one day I'll probably stop running, but today's not the day.
No, absolutely not. That's you should never stop running, especially since on trail. In some respects, when you get slower, it doesn't get better, but the level of satisfaction stays the same, right? I mean, I could see running road races and getting slower and slower and you started sort of running on the same heights as the sweepers there's a point where it's like, I don't want to be on those city roads anymore. But being out in the mountains, being on trails, it stays great. You're talking about Italy. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research there. All these long distance hiking trails in Europe that are in mileage very similar to like our long distance hiking trails like the PCT, but in style so very different because they're not as remote. There's no wilderness on a level. You stay in different places, and there's some really great ones that sort of start on one side of the Alps and finish on the other side. So you can start in Germany and you hike through Austria, up the mountains through Italy, and you end up in the other side, and so southern Europe, where and some of these trips are absolutely incredible, and you can stay in high alpine huts in for the night. So you can make it a very different experience than just a 5-minute trail nap on a race.
Sure. And you don't have to worry about cutoffs.
And you don't have to worry about cutoffs. All you have to worry about is making it to the hut in the evenings before the kitchen closes.
Before the wine bar closes.
Before the wine bar closes. Like, oh, fantastic. This sounds all incredible. I'm heading to Switzerland this late summer, and running the 100K of the Ultra Tour Monte Rosa. And I'm super, super excited about that. That's been always my big dream, in taking my running that I've discovered over here and experienced here on the West Coast, and taking it to Europe and to the Alps, where I've sort of grown up, and experienced one of those European races. So I'm very curious, especially from a race director point of view too, how different a race is going to feel like. Everything from how is the course marked, how are the aid stations, what are they stocked with? Right? We know that the Swiss put chocolate on their aid stations. I mean, how amazing is that? I can't wait for that. Yeah. So I'm very interested to see how that's going to be different. I'm looking forward to that.
They have an event in Switzerland called the Swiss 360, and I'm really intrigued by that. It's 360 kilometers, and you have, I believe, 5 days to get through the course. And 5 days is pretty generous.
Yeah.
And I think a reasonably fit trail runner probably is able to do that. But looking at the scenery and everything, very similar to Tour de France through Italy. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of intrigued by that a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. We as Americans often look at Europe and we only talk about UTMB just because it sucks so much attention out of our entire kind of media focus and stuff. But Europe has a few absolutely incredible races in the Alps, in incredible regions that, if one does want to go to run a race in the Alps, absolutely would not have to try to jump through all the hoops to try to get into UTMB. Now, UTMB is still a very, very unique experience that I think I wouldn't fault anybody for wanting to try to run once. But if somebody wants a European racing experience, it doesn't have to be UTMB. There's so many great races over there.
Oh. Sure. That's, talking to a friend of mine who came through here on his way to Canada. He just finished his 8th Hard Rock. And I have a good friend, Kirk Abt, who finished his 25th Hard Rock. And they did a quick math, and they came to the answer that Kirk has climbed 1.65 million feet in the San Juan Mountains. In his 20 Hard Rocks. But the point being, when I talked about our ticket being punched, it's time to close that book, go on another chapter. When you look at a race like Hard Rock, or a race like Boston Marathon, or whatever it is that people do continuously over and over every year, for me, I can't slight those people for wanting to do those things. Hey, that's your love. And, I had my short love affair with Hard Rock, but it consumes your whole year. You find out you get in. And I think we lose sometimes other experiences that would have been just as enjoyable, or maybe even more, if we had done other things. So it comes at a price to do something 5 times, 10 times, 25. And for me, like I said, 5 is enough. 13 years, I waited. But in those 13 years, I had a number of great experiences at other things, not just Hard Rock. But that's often overlooked, I've had friends that have done Boston Marathon, 20, 30 times. And they're just consumed by that every year. God bless them.
Yeah.
Well, that's not me.
No, that's why I tell my kids, right? You can do anything, but you can't do everything. Committing to one thing just means you have to say no to other things. And as you're saying, I don't think there's any fault in it. In fact, there's a fascination. We hear those people who do the Manitou incline, 3 times a day, every single day of their life or something like that. And this level of commitment creates a different experience. The people who come and run a race or a route once, they get that one experience, and especially in the outdoors where weather and seasons have such a huge effect on how we experience a place. And the people who come back and do it over and over again obviously get a much deeper sense of what a certain place is all about. But it does come at a cost that if you do that and you don't do that. I am doing quite a few races this year, sort of by accident, and that does come at a price that I don't really have any big adventures planned for the year. Last year I had some great opportunities to do some runs that were way off of any race course path and had great times with that, and I enjoyed it a lot. This year it's all about racing, so I think there is sort of a give and take in there, right?
For sure.
Well, Mike, this was absolutely incredible. Again, congratulations for completing Hard Rock 5 times. If people want to reach out to you and I don't know, pick your brain, ask you a question about Hard Rock or about your races, I will email you before we post this to get all the links to all of your races. But tell people where they can reach you best. Is Instagram good? Is where, if people want to reach out to you, what would be the best way?
On Instagram, I'm on Mike Runs Idaho. Keeping it pretty simple. Website is MikeRunsIdaho.com.
Well, fantastic. That is actually really easy to remember. That's fantastic. Super, Mike.
I had somebody say, Mike Runs Idaho, are you a politician? And I said, no.
Oh, I like it. Mike Runs Idaho 2020, 2022. Yeah. That's fantastic. Oh, I like that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mike, thanks for coming on the show. This was brilliant. Thank you so much. It's a race that is so far beyond my comfort level. That one is something that truly terrifies me. Perhaps it's the lightning strikes. You had a pretty good weather year this year, right? That's something I guess we didn't talk about on the show.
It was perfect, and I think that too probably certainly helped. A course record being broken. Very few. We had some stream crossings, not a whole lot. Virtually no snow. Trail was packed. With recent rains, not a lot of dust. It was, you couldn't ask for better weather. No rain. Yep. So, and I would say, it's not for you. It's on your horizon. You just haven't quite seen it coming yet.
I like that. I'm not in any way dismissing it, right? But I guess what I'm trying to express is that that I have huge respect for of this race. I think I'm adequately seeing how difficult it is, how challenging the environment is that this race is in, how remote it is. It's a very different experience in Western states. I feel like if I would get into Western states, sure, the heat can do you in at Western State, but in general, I think it's something with so many aid stations, so much support. I think I can finish it. I would feel fairly confident, but hard work is something that I think I understand. The runners that accomplish this race, I understand the level of, the level of accomplishment. It's truly a feat.
I was with the gal, Betsy Kalmeyer. She finished it for the 20th time. And I was hopscotching back and forth with her through the aid stations, and I was observing, because I'm all about learning something new. And I would watch her, and she would come in and she would sit 5 minutes, then she was gone. Every aid station I was with her, she would sit. So I was like, maybe I should sit. I have a habit of standing and then getting what I want and kind of mingling and then leaving. But that was the one lesson I took from her, was to sit. And my lesson from Kirk in my very first Hard Rock was to take my poles. 25 miles in, I was dog meat, and Kirk says, "Where's your poles?" I said, "Right here." He said, "Take them. Don't go without them." And ever since then, every single hard rock, those poles go with me the entire way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm European, so I don't have a problem with poles, but I love my poles. I think they, in challenging terrain, they are a huge, huge benefit.
And then I think one of the first things he told me was, if you can shuffle, you can finish.
Oh, yeah, good.
And I was like, yeah, thanks, Kirk, for that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. Fantastic.
Yep. Well, I'll leave you with this thought then, that to people who, I guess, listened in on this, every race, you're setting the table in your preparation, picking out what you want to have for dinner in your preparation, because that dinner table is your race, and dessert is that golden finish. Whether you kiss a rock at Hard Rock, whether you get a buckle, some 100-miler, whether it's your, first 25K, finish is the sweet dessert of that table you set.